Well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, third time will be a charm. So I'm glad we've got all these technical difficulties worked out and everyone is able to hear and see now. So as I was saying, Daniel started with Technisoft about 12 years ago as the senior developer based out of the Australian office. He expanded his role over the years to include global training and support duties. This kind of led him to moving into the U.S. in 2012 to represent the interest of Technisoft in the North America. He's now focusing on all aspects of the product from sales, support, training, and development as an integral part of the team. So, Daniel, with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you, and we look forward to seeing it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Linda. And thank you, Steve and team, for joining this afternoon, I guess, where you are. I'm in Seattle, so it's still the morning here for another 40 minutes, but it will be the afternoon soon enough. So this morning, I'm going to run through the Service Manager product from a point of view of a service team, taking a phone call, dispatching a technician out to deal with a fault at the customer's equipment, something that was maybe originally sold to them by the company, and then recording what they did and possibly invoicing the customer for that work. So a basic, very standard do and charge service kind of call, something that hopefully everybody on the call is familiar with. It should give you enough understanding of the overview of the product to obviously open up for questions and things like that. We will be looking at an air conditioning unit, so essentially a HVAC type scenario. The reason we chose that is we felt that everybody connected to the call would be able to relate to an air conditioning unit. Everybody has one, or at least has worked with one before. So with that said, I'm going to go straight into it. So the product that we're looking at here on the screen now is the Technisoft Advanced Scheduling product, and this is the tool that our customers use in order to find and schedule their resources. And when I talk about resources, we have three distinct types of resources in Service Manager. The first one, and of course the primary one, being your employees or your service technicians. The second one being your internal equipment. So if you have your own internal equipment, things that you maintain internally, pieces of equipment that you use to take out to your customer site in order to do the service. Well, obviously, if that equipment is going to be out at customer A for 3 days and customer B calls, you need to know when that's going to be available so you can do their work. So that's also a resource. And scrolling down here, we also have your subcontractors. So if you're dealing with subcontractors, you can also record them into the time system to indicate when you've booked them out to do work on your behalf. So all three are just essentially considered resources in Service Manager and can be treated in the same way. But today we're going to deal with a phone call, and we're going to send one of our technicians out to do some work for our customer that's calling in. I am going to be using the admin employee. We can see here that is myself. I'm logged in as the admin employee, and it just will make it a little easier to flow through the screen using the same employee rather than jumping backwards and forwards. We can see here we have the calendar view up, and I've got my 5 employees visible here. And if I wanted to include something else, it's just a case of coming in here and ticking something on, and you'll see that that's added an extra column here with that equipment that I just ticked on. So using the tools over here on the right, and there's numerous fold-out panels here that obviously all do different things, you can very quickly define down to the list of people that you're looking to create schedules for, either today or into the future. With the understanding that there's 2 very distinct ways normally of businesses doing their scheduling. The first way is the way that we're going to do today, which is finding some time that we have available and creating our work order from that time. The second method would be creating the work orders in the system, and then at the end of the day or the week or what have you, going through and scheduling those as a batch process. And the advanced scheduling tool handles both of those workflows, but we are looking at the calendar-based one today. So I'm going to go ahead and tick that off. What we can look at here is obviously we can see we have our employees listed here. Each of these calendar icons are obviously schedules that we've created, either for multiple jobs or the same job, and we can see the job numbers up here. We've got 1122 here, 1165 there. We can see they're all color-coded here, and they're by employee. Before I go ahead and create something new for my employee, you'll see that the calendar works the same as any calendar product that you're used to. So if Clarence was going to be away that afternoon, I could quite simply just move the job over to Dean the way that I did, and that's now been reassigned to him. I can move it back. I can resize it, obviously, to increase the time as required. I can do all of those sort of things as needed. I've even got functionality like the ability to split an appointment, so I can basically split it across 2 days, and it'll take this appointment and halve it, or quarter it, for example, and put some of the time on one day and some of the time on another. The functionality is quite detailed and quite strong with the way that you manipulate your time. We can see here that each of these records currently is color-coded, and if I come across over to here, we have the appointment coloring over here on the right, and I've currently got mine color-coded by priority, and here are my priorities, and I can see those colors. And I can go down and I can change that to different things depending on the kind of work that I might be doing. If I do it by job type, we can see it instantly recolors, and here are my different job types that I have. I could do it by agreements, for example. If I have my gold, silver, and bronze agreements, then I may want them color-coded by those different things. But maybe by status, active, closed, things like that, I can color-code them by that. So depending on the person using the software, and this is a person by person, each person using the software can certainly have it configured a different way. If I'm in a team that's dealing primarily with service jobs and all of our customers are under agreements, then I might want it color-coded by agreement. If I'm in the production side of the business where I'm dealing with sending people out there to do the installs and initial configuration of things I'm selling my customer, I may want to have done by customer, for example. But in this case, I'm just going to go back to priority. All right, so that's a little overview of how the screen works here. Now let's progress into basically doing a service ticket as if somebody had called through. So a customer has called in and they're wanting a service ticket. Obviously today is full, so I would say to them, well, we can't do today. We might go to tomorrow, and I'll just click on tomorrow and see tomorrow is full as well. So we would obviously just continue looking around until we found an open date. So I might come down here and I might just jump forward a little bit, and I think I've got things on all of these calendar days, so I'm just going to go and find something empty. And finally, we've got something empty. So I've got the 18th here, Monday the 18th, and it's free across all of my resources. Now my customer on the phone may say to me that they're free Monday, Wednesday, and the following Tuesday. And as you can see here over on the left-hand side panel, hopefully my mouse is visible for everybody, like the mouse pointer, so you can see where I'm moving. But I am over here in the left-hand panel. You'll see I've selected the 18th, the 20th, and the 26th. So this is one of the features that I really like to highlight, because if you're dealing with people that have their own schedule and they're available at certain times and dates and things like that, they may not be sequential. They may be broken across a number of days like that. And the system will allow you to select non-sequential days. And as you can see now here, we still have our 5 resources. And you can see here we've got Monday here, and it says Monday the 18th, and we can see the 18 over there. Then we have Wednesday the 20th here, and if I scroll along, there's Wednesday the 20th, and then as I keep going, there's Tuesday the 26th. So if I have my customer on the phone and they've given me specific days, I can pop those in there very quickly and see when I have time available. And that's a very simple thing for you to be able to do. I'm going to come back here to the 11th just because I wanted a day where I have at least one other task. And I'm going to, as I said, okay, so I'm on the phone to my customer and I've said, well, I can send Administration Manager out there on Monday the 11th at 1 o'clock. Will that work? Yes, it does. So we estimate that this work will take about 4 hours, so we can go ahead and put that in there. 3.5, I'm sorry. And I can go ahead and add an appointment. The system is now asking me, I want to connect that to a work order, as we refer to it in Service Manager, a job. So it's saying here that it is job related and it's asking me to connect that. Of course, at this point, I haven't created a job, so my next step would be to go through and generate that job. But before I do that, we can have a look over here on the Time Entry tab. We can see that the system has automatically picked up the dates and times that I've used by drawing those on here, and we can see that. Obviously, I've got my screen in the background configured to 30-minute increments. If I need it a little different, I can just come along here and obviously change the time here directly, and that will allow me to do that. I can set up recurrence if I need to. So if I am going to go out there every every Monday for the next 3 weeks, for example, I would be able to do that through the recurrence to have and generate 3 appointments at that point. And I can also enter any notations that I need to at that point as well. But at this point, what I want to do is connect it to a job. So I've said to my customer, well, we're going to send somebody out there on Monday at 1 o'clock. Excuse me. Let me go ahead now and generate you a work order or a job so I can give you a reference number if you need to call back. And I can do that either by just clicking on the new button here, or I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my search tool. So I click on that to bring that up. And it's opened up into our document entry program, which is where the document will be created. And it's asking us to search for the records that we need to in order to create the job. The first thing it's asking us for here is our site record or our customer record. The next part of the screen is our equipment, and we'll go through those both in some more detail. Service Manager is a fully integrated product with the Sage 300 accounting back end. And so one of the integration points is obviously accounts receivable. We take the accounts receivable customer and Service Manager, and we turn that into a site record. And you can have one-to-many relationship there. So you can have your head office being your accounts receivable customer, and then individual sites for each location that you deal with, each service location. So while you may be billing a head office for work that you do, you attend to 3 different business locations, and they would all be set up as individual sites in Service Manager. Each site will contain a record of the equipment that's on that site, but it's all obviously still linked back to the parent AR customer. So that's the first thing that the screen is asking us here, is to find that record, to find our site field. If the customer was on the phone and they had their serial number, for example, of the air conditioning unit, if we put in the serial number here, it will go off and reverse load all of that other information. So we wouldn't need to find the customer first if they can just give us the serial number. But I'm just going to go through sort of each of the parts independently. So hopefully you get an understanding of the information that's available. So at this point, we can either type in the site number if we know it, or we can bring up the Finder. Now, I'm not sure how much of the Sage 300 product that you're familiar with for the people listening, but this is what's referred to as the Finder, and this is a common tool. Anytime you're searching on any of the values in the software, you're able to use the Finder to do that. Over here, we can see Find By, and I've got the address line 1 selected here, and I can say Contains. So at that point, I can type anything that I want into there. So I know that this customer is at Wabash Road, I think. So if I type WAB, you'll see that it's automatically filtered that. And if I scroll along here to find that address line 1, you can see here it is 2820 Wabash Road. So by just typing in part of that, it's automatically found that record. So you're able to search on any value in the system in order to find a record as need be. And we will go ahead and select that in a minute, but I did want to show you one button here that we have, which is also quite useful. If you're dealing with customers that maybe you haven't dealt with before, they've found you on the web, they've determined that you're, and as I said, not really sure what Stephen, your company does, but we're dealing with a HVAC company here as a sample. They've looked on your website and discovered that you service air conditioning units, and so they've contacted you, said, well, we didn't buy something from you, but we're willing to pay you to come out and service our equipment. We've obviously created our time in the background. Now we could actually go ahead and use this button here to create both an AR customer, a site record, and the equipment record, all from in the same screen. Obviously, I need the appropriate security to do that as a user. But if I do, then rather than having to go into the account screen, create the account record, come back into the site screen, create the site record, and then create the equipment record, I can do it from all inside this one screen here. And of course, I can link to an existing AR customer and just create the site, for example, or any combination of those options. But I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to type in the site. And it's my Bargain Mart Los Angeles. I can see here that they're marked as a VIP customer. That's a piece of information that I've stored against the site record, something to pop up when I create new jobs for them. So I'm letting my person entering the information on the screen see that kind of notification straight up. We can see immediately it's gone into accounts receivable and it's doing a credit check here. And we can see here, what is their credit limit, how much is outstanding, and how much is also on other orders. And we can see that right now this customer is over their credit limit by 800,000. Obviously in my software here, which I use to do demonstrations, I just keep adding value to this customer and they never pay their bills, but that's totally fine. I am logged in as the administration user, so I'm able to continue past this screen. If I wasn't, I would need the appropriate security to continue, as I've told the system not to allow jobs to be created when the customer is in credit hold. But I'm just going to continue past that. We can see here the primary contact for our customer, and we can go along and we can change that. So it's Rosie, the one that's called us. So we come along here and we select Rosie. And so now what we're saying is, while we are creating a job for our customer 1100, and we normally deal with their primary contact, for this particular call, we're dealing with Rosie. And that means that later on when we go to call, it's going to know her phone number and give us a call history directly to her. We can see the address details there, and we would obviously want to confirm with the customer that those details are correct. Over here on the right, we can see any custom fields that we have configured for our customer. We may store things in there like gate codes, whatever we might need to store against our individual customers. You can create your own fields and enter those values as need be. We could view the history for this customer, and I will come back and look at the history, but when we're looking at our equipment, we can see our AR activity and whether we have any in-house warranty applying for this customer. So we've put our customer record in, and then the next thing would be obviously to find the equipment that we're dealing with here. So again, I can bring up that same search screen that we saw earlier, and you can see it is exactly the same look and feel with exactly the same functionality, obviously just with a different amount of data and different type of data in the screen here. I can also bring up this button here, and that's going to bring up a screen that's going to show me all of the equipment that the customer currently has on site. And when I say equipment, what I'm talking about is at some point during the life cycle of my relationship with this customer, I've sold them something that we sell, and now I'm providing the warranty on that or the service on that. When you sell those items, and they would be sold from inventory control, which again is another module in the Sage 300 product suite that Service Manager integrates with. When you sell an inventory item, it gets converted into an equipment record in service, which is that post-sales master file that you use to track all the history and everything that you've ever done for that equipment. That way you're able to really get a true understanding of the service cost for your business, or the true profitability on each individual item, as the system will track from the purchase order module, the costing of it, all the way through the sales module, the selling of it, and then in Service Manager, how much it may have cost you as a post-sales service. And so what we're seeing here is a list of the equipment that are currently registered against this site. In other words, all of the equipment that I have sold to this customer over the years. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to find the equipment that I'm dealing with. And here I've got this Train XR13 air conditioning unit, and I've sold them 3 of them. And the customer has told me maybe that it's equipment 02, or they've got a serial number of 02, so I can see that serial number here, and that's the one that I'm going to work with. Up the top here, I can look at a picture and see that it's the right one. Maybe I might have multiple models of different types, for example, and the customer's not quite sure which one. I might bring up the picture. Is it the black one with the red logo? Oh yes, it's that one. Well, that can help you identify the appropriate piece of equipment. Each equipment can have its own custom fields, and we can see here I've stored in here all these custom fields for this air conditioning unit. Things that obviously Service Manager is generic with its equipment. It has some basic information and manufacturer model, all of those sort of things. But anything that's specific to an air conditioner, you would create as custom fields, and we can see all of those values here. And I would be able to look at the history, which I'll go off and have a look at now. Before I create a job, I may want to run a history report here. And this is one of the customizable reports. And I can see here any previous work done. And I can see the equipment was created, and then it's been modified numerous times. And then I can see here a job 1191 was previously done for this equipment. The customer said that it was smoking and it wouldn't turn off. And we used these parts and labor in order to repair that equipment. And so I would be able to see that all quickly from the history tab. Obviously, your technicians would be able to see that as well in the field, and we'll have a look at that later. But I can get an understanding of where this equipment's at in its life based on its history. I'm going to go ahead and close that down. And so this is the equipment that we want. So we go ahead and we select that. And what's happened now is on our search panel, and obviously as a user familiar with the system, I would have done this all in a much quicker time. We can see it's populated here our customer code, and we've also populated here our equipment code. and we can see that it's currently under warranty. Whilst it is under warranty, we're actually going to go ahead and bill our customer for the work that we're doing, just so you can see the full process of what that might look like. We can see here the sales invoice number, and over here on the right we can access some of those same screens that we looked at before, the custom fields, the picture, and of course the history and any advanced maintenance. So we're still on our phone to our customer. They've called through. We found the time in our scheduling product to send somebody out there. Now we've found the equipment and we want to put in the reported problem. So the reported problem on this one is unit seems to be blowing only 50%. Something like that. I'm not, obviously I'm a software programmer and deal with software all day, so I'm not a air conditioning repair technician, so I'm not really sure if that's an appropriate fault, but it sounds good to me. It's something I certainly would call my air conditioning company for if my unit was not doing very well. Coming down the screen here, the next screen that we can see is the available agreement. So if we've got any agreements configured for our equipment, that will automatically populate for us. And if I go into the details of that, I can see here that the agreement covers the entire site, the dates the agreement is covered by, and what we're covering. So we can see here we have 4 different types of billing that we do. We have our standard services, our labor services, our subcontractor, and any inventory. And we can see over here on the right what percentage of those are we covering as part of our agreement. And that can be broken up into very specific information as well. As we can see here with labor services, it says all plus specific. In other words, one of the labor services may not be covered. It has its own specific values. We can see when we're covering, and the system is automatically highlighted as Wednesdays. That's the date that I'm logged into the system. And we can also see the agreement details about whether the agreement is currently paid or not, as we may not provide warranty under agreements if they're currently unpaid. And so we could see all of that. But again, just to keep it simple, I'm going to take the agreement off. We're not covering this by an agreement this time. We're actually going to bill our customer. And the reasons we may do that are obviously internal understanding or other things like that. In the next part down the bottom here, we can see what we want to do is create a new job. And we do have multiple different things here. We've got job, sale, quote, or recurring job. But we're just at this point, we want to create a new job. And we are going to do that from a template. And I've gone ahead and created a template called Standard HVAC Service, which just has a little bit of information pre-keyed in there, ready for the technician to be able to go out on site and do that work. Excuse me. So at this point, we've put in our customer and our equipment that we're dealing with, what's wrong with the equipment, and we've chosen a template to move ahead with. And obviously, I can use my finder here to go through all of the templates in the system to find the appropriate one, or I could just untick that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add. The system has gone off in the background here and generated a job, and it's automatically opened up the equipment window here, the full screen where I've put in the equipment, and brought me immediately to that reported problem field in case I need to put more information in there. I can put in here whether it's a rework or a callback and any reported symptom. Later on, I can come back in and put down whether the equipment was needed to be shut down. We can see here that there is a response of 2 hours from log date of when we are supposed to respond to the equipment. And that information has been generated from somewhere else outside in the system. It may have come from the customer themselves, what their response time was, the equipment itself, and we may have put in a specific response time for this equipment, and it can also come from the agreement as well. So if the agreement that you've sold them, a gold agreement, for example, has a 4-hour response time, then that's what we would see there, and it will always be the lowest of the 3. We can also confirm here the site location where the equipment has been stored, and this is information I've obviously pre-filled in. So we can see here, I'm on the phone to my customer. Before I send my technician out there, I just want to confirm that it's still building block B, department laundry, level 10, room A, for example. And they may say to us, yes, that's correct, or we may have to change that depending on if the equipment's movable and that sort of thing. But all of this is looking good to us over here, so we can go ahead and click accept. What we have now is a job being created in the system. We can see here job 1216. We've got an equipment record here that's been created, which is linked to our equipment that we were talking about. We can see a phase here. The system is multi-phase, so you can generate multiple phases per job if need be. Not obviously something that normally happens with service jobs, and we can see here this is a part of the service center. But your production jobs and your job costing jobs where they may be open for months at a time and you want to track your revenue and costs against different parts of the job, you would break those down by different phases to indicate all the different types of work that you're doing inside that same job. The next thing we can see is the system from the template automatically brought in a task that we need to perform, and that task is a standard air conditioning repair. That task also contains a list of activities that need to be performed in order to do that task. And we're going to see those when we have a look at the Field Connect, the module that the technician will use in the field. And we've also added a note here that just says signature required on all work, just so the technician will be able to see that. So we found our time in the advanced scheduling tool. We went ahead and generated a job by putting in our customer number and our equipment number. And because we did that from a template, it automatically filled in all of this information for us. So we can go ahead and just save that and close that down. You'll see it comes all the way back here to our schedule that we generated and fills in the job, the phase, the equipment, and the task that we are creating that time for. And it did that for me all automatically. So at that point, we can go ahead and just click on OK. And we now have time created in our system here, ready to send admin manager out for that job to repair that equipment and do that task that we put in there. And that's the basic scheduling process that will go ahead. If I go back to the document entry and reload that job, I'll just want to show you here on the time tab that time is listed here as well. Okay, so it's all the same data in all of the screens. You'll see different data in different screens. It just provides usually with different visibility based on the person that would be doing that data entry. So of course, if I was to come into here and make this 5 hours, for example, and then come back here, you'll see as soon as I move over and click on that, it grew automatically because it refreshed that it was 5 hours. Now my screen's set to auto refresh every few minutes, so it would do that automatically without me needing to click on it, so I could see that. But you can see that it is all the same data, just presented in different views. So at this point, I've taken the call, my customer's off the phone, I've given them their job number, I may have printed out the work order for them or customer confirmation and emailed it to them. That's all standard processes, things that you might do. Obviously, all of the printing in Service Manager is connected to Crystal Reporting, so all of the reporting can be modified to suit your exact formats that you need. But I may have printed out that customer confirmation, sent it to my customer and said, well, next Monday, admin manager should be out there at 1 o'clock to repair that air conditioning unit for you. So that's the jobs in the system now, and it's a set and forget sort of scenario. What we're going to move to now is the Field Connect module, which is the module that our technician is going to use in order to consume those schedules and perform the work that they need to do. So I'm just going to minimize these screens here just to get back to one window here, which is the Field Connect, and we can see that here. I'm logged in. It is a web product, and I'm logged in here on my internet browser. It is a web product that supports all devices, so whether they be phone, tablet, or computer. Obviously, I'm doing it on a computer. It doesn't matter as long as it has a web browser. So I'm going to come in here, and I've already forgotten the date that I put that in here, Monday the 11th of May. So I'm going to log in here as Monday the 11th of May, and I'm going to log on. Not sure what happened there. And when I've logged onto the screen here, I can see I've got my daily schedule, my weekly schedule. I am logged in as admin and I have security, so I could go through and look at schedules for other employees. I can see any dispatch jobs. Those are urgent jobs that were dispatched to me. I can search for other jobs. Maybe I don't quite know what the job is, so I can search for it. I can add non-job appointments. So if I need to mark into the system, I'm going to the dentist next Thursday, for example, I can do that all from inside my Field Connect. And if I have security, I can also go ahead and create a new job as well. And that's quite a handy function. I may be out on site doing this work, and while I'm on site, my customer says to me, well, we have another air conditioning unit that we know is going to need repairs, next Thursday. Can you generate me a job while you're here and schedule that? And so I can do that all from inside here as well if I have security. And that's giving great service to our customer. They get all of the details they need while my technician's out on site rather than have to call back to the office. But for today, I'm going to click on my daily schedule, and I'm going to see I have 2 jobs that I need to do today. The first one is from 9:30 till 12:30, and the next one is from 1 to 6:15. I can click on directions here, and hopefully my addresses of these aren't the same. It's probably the same. It is. And it would show me my directions for the day. These are connected to the same customer, so the address is the same. But obviously, as you can imagine, it would bring up the map app on my phone, and it would show me the route that I'm going to be taking today. I didn't show you that, but that is also available in the scheduling tool. So we have down the bottom here a routing button where you can generate the route for your technicians on a daily basis to see how you've scheduled them. Maybe you've crossed them over on the map and you would get more efficiency by moving a couple of jobs around. And that's what the routing tool gives you the ability to do on the advanced scheduler. So my technician, he's already done this first job, and we're going to deal with the one that we're working on here. So we can see I've got job 1216. It's priority 5 and active. Here is my customer, and it's a HVAC job. It has no actuals, and I've got the time here. So I can go into that, and I can look at the details of that. I've got the job details at the top here. I can see it's a HVAC service, the priority and status, and who generated the job for me. I can see the address where I'm going to, and again, I can click on that. It's opening the map on my phone. Now I can just click navigate to get there. I've got the contact. There's Rosie. I could click on her phone number. That will bring up the dialer on my phone. Rosie, I was due to be out there at 1 o'clock. I'm running a little late. I should be there at 1:30. All good customer service and something that customers expect nowadays. I've got more contacts. If I was unable to get onto Rosie, I can click the more contacts and look at all of the contacts for that customer and go ahead and call one of the other ones, for example. I can see the comments against the customer, and I can see their custom fields, notations, so on and so forth. Scrolling down here, I can see here's the equipment that I'm going to be performing the maintenance on. I can see all of the details here of the equipment. It's a air conditioner, its serial number, its warranty days, so on and so forth, and its location. I can see the reported problem. Here's where I could view, as a technician out on the field, I could view its history, and I can see those same kind of pieces of information here. I can even open up the previous job. I can transfer, I can edit, I can look at its custom fields. We had a look at those earlier on the screen. So if I need to get some information about the kind of unit that it is, it might be stored in the custom fields, and I can have access to that directly. I can see the tasks that I need to perform, and I can see that here it's a standard air conditioning task. And here is my appointment that I have, and I've got my notes and things like that available down the bottom here as well. Well, I'm not going to click on each of these buttons here to show you what they do. I'm just going to show you the basic ones, and if there are questions later, we can have a look at how they work. So at this point, I've looked at the details, and so I may come back out here and click on record and start my recording. And what that's doing is it's told the system I've arrived on site and I'm recording my time. So the technician doesn't need to come back in at the end of the day and put all their time and all of that sort of stuff in. They can quite simply just record their time as they arrive on site, and they just start that and they stop that later on. If I come back to my my scheduling screen, so I want to talk more about the back office, front office connection here. My technician's out on site and he's doing his work. I'm a team leader and I'm looking at my technicians across their day, trying to figure out where they are and how they're going. So here I can see, if I just scroll back up, I'm sorry. Here I can see my day, and obviously it would be more populated than we have today. You'll see here, this one here is a little yellow icon here, and if I click on it to cause it to refresh, it now has a little blue icon. Now, of course, that would have happened automatically during the standard refresh. And as I hover over it, you can see the little blue icon indicates that it is recording. I even have a button up here in the top, and of course it happens to refresh just after I say that it would have done it on refresh automatically. I have a button up the top here that I can click on. And what that's doing now is it will reformat the screen for me and show me the ones that are recording as bold, and it will dim the rest of them out. So imagine I'm a team leader, I've got 10 techs, they're all out in the field today, and now I'm just sitting there kind of watching where they're going. What's going to happen if I leave this screen running is as they move through their day and start their recorder, each of the items on the screen are going to dim in and dim out as they move through their day. So no longer do I have to call them, where are you now, that sort of thing. I should be able to see that visually in the back office without having to interrupt my technician doing their work. And so it is all live, and it's all happening live in the background. So I'm out on site here and I've started my recording. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to start doing my task, and I've got my task here. So I can open up my task and I can see here, here's the task and the status and the priority. And then here are my activities. So the first one here is a question. So I can go into that and it says, you know, is the unit powering on? Yes, it is. And I completed this activity. And so I can go save and I can do the next activity. Check the intake pipe for leaks. And of course, I just made these up. And again, I'm not an air conditioning technician, so I'm going to say, did I complete that? Yes, I did. And I'm going to just go through and I'm going to do each of my activities that are on my task. And it's an unlimited list. And there's 4 types of activities. The first one is a question, which we saw at the start, which is going to give me a yes or no response. The next one is just an activity, which is just, did I do it or not do it? The third one is the one that I have here, which is asking for a numeric measurement. And the fourth one is a text entry where I can just type in some text. So this one is a numeric measurement. It's asking me to measure the external airflow, and I put that in as 100 psi, and I can record that. At that point, all of the activities were done, and you can see they're all ticked on here indicating that I did them. The first one was a question, which I answered yes. The last one was a numeric measurement, which I answered on 100 psi. Both the task and the activities themselves can have notes and PDFs attached to them. And so as a technician, if I'm out in the field, in order to do this measure external airflow, I may have also attached a PDF here, which is a diagram on how they do that, or instructions on how they go about measuring the PSI on something. And so I can have that information all flowing through. And of course, I can have multiple activities. I can have 10 activities, or I could have 3 tasks, each with 3 activities. How you cut and paste that data is really flexible and up to you. And of course, I could not use tasks at all. I've got the job open. Excuse me. Okay, so now I can come in and I can say that I've completed this and it passed, and I can save that to mark that task as complete. So while each of the activities were complete, I've now gone ahead and marked that task as complete. Coming back to my job here, so I've done my task here and it's complete, but I needed to use some parts in order to do that work. So I can come down here and I've got an items and services button. So I can come along here and I want to say I use one of my parts from my truck. And so I'm going to go ahead and find that. And here it is. Actually, I want to use a different one. I've used some pipe, and we can see here I've got the description of the pipe, and I've just found that from the inventory control list here. But I've used that pipe, and I've used 3 of those, and however their unit of measure is tracked. It's not serial tracked here. It's coming out of location 1, which might be my truck, and that would default to my location here. And we can see here the unit price is 4 and the cost is $1.23. So I'm consuming inventory as I go. And maybe I needed a second one, so I come in here and I click on that. And I needed a basic compressor unit, and I needed one of those as well. And come down here and we can see it's a little bit more expensive, $179 for that basic compressor unit. And I'm going to go ahead and click on save there. A lot of other fields on that screen, all connected to the inventory control integration, things that the technician would not normally need to enter, but they are there if they do need to. I may also need to capture some services that we performed. So I can come in here and click on services and change up here to say a standard service. And what we want to use here is a miscellaneous item. Maybe the field tech needed to run across to the hardware store and buy some bolts, for example. So he's able to go ahead and put in bolts, and he bought 2 of those. And he told the customer he would charge them $20 for him, and it cost him $8, for example. That's what he paid for them. Obviously, the disbursement of that through accounts payable and all of those sort of things is a secondary act. The idea being that the technician just needs to be able to enter in to the system what they did, and so they can move on to their next job. They don't have to write it down on a piece of paper where you're going to end up with data entry issues and things like that. They just need to be able to enter that. So the AP side of that would obviously happen later. But for now, he just says he used a miscellaneous item, bolts, 2 of them. He told the customer $20 and it cost him $8 at the hardware store. So he can go ahead and add that to there. So as you can imagine, the field tech's out there, he's entering all the parts that he's using, he's doing his task and his activities and things like that as needed. He may be taking notes. So I can come in here and say, here's the state of the queue when I arrived. And he can attach files. So he can add a note, something like that, for example, and then he can attach files. So a lot of people are using this to take photos, for example, of the equipment when they arrive on site and applying that photo to a note. So they have a record of what the equipment was like when they arrived there. especially if it might be something damage, for example, caused by an external force that means that you're not covered under warranty. Having that photo evidence at the start is obviously very useful for when the customer complains 30 days later about their invoice they received. So, being able to capture that kind of information is certainly beneficial for a lot of people. So when I click on this button here, it would bring up the gallery on my phone, for example. I'm just going to go ahead and choose any old photo here. And I can do that and save that, and that will create a note here. Here is the note, and that picture is now attached to that note. And I can see that both here on the Field Connect and back on the desktop product as well. So at that point, he may have finished his work. So here is his equipment here. He did all of his tasks. He's recorded his time. He went through and put in all the parts that he used, all the services that he did, and he even took a photo and uploaded that as well. So at that point, he's finished. So he's able to finish his recording. And he can just say stop here if he needs to edit the details, or you can define a predefined list here of quick codes, for example. So he can just say stop labor, and labor is my code that I have. And that's automatically put in here 8 minutes of time, okay, which is the amount of time from when we started to when we stop. We do know that he needs to take that signature, so I can click on sign off here, and I can say that it's Rosie doing the sign off here. I may mark the job at the same time as ready to invoice, for example, and I hand my device over to Rosie, and she gives me her signature, and we all know how great those are to do. Goes ahead and clicks OK. And at that point, from the technician's point of view, he may be ready to move on. He's done his tasks, he's repaired the equipment, he's recorded the parts and services that he used, and he took a sign off. If need be, and he has the security to do that, he can actually generate the invoice directly from in here as well. He can take a payment in here as well, and he can record all of that and generate that. And he can even email or print the invoice directly from the device as well. We're not going to do that. We're going to bring that back onto the desktop here to show you the next part of the standard workflow, but he's able to do that if he has the appropriate security. If not, he's finished, he's done what he needed to do. He would go back to his schedule here and move to his next job, and that is the Field Connect module as a whole. Excuse me. So I'm going to move away from that now, and so at this point now, our job is back in the system here. I've loaded the job back up in our document entry program here. We can see the status of the job has been changed to ready to invoice. We can see here is the signature that was captured, and we can see that from inside here. And if we look over here at our time, what we can see here is that we have time that is now due for retrieval. And if I open that up through here, we can see here's our 8 minutes of actual time. Okay, so that's the time that we would be billing for. We said he'd be out there for 5 hours and 15 minutes, but he was only there for 8 minutes. He's very quick, and so we're able to record the difference between those two. You can have multiple actuals per estimate. So if you had a break, for example, he's able to stop his recorder, record the first part, go for his lunch break, start the recorder, and stop it at the end of his day and record the second part. And there'd be multiple actuals here with obviously a subtotal. We can come across to our items and services tab here, and we can see all of the items and parts that he used in order to do that work. Now, while we're going to do this next part manually, which is retrieve that time to billing, over here on the left-hand side of the job, we'll see right now there is no billing available. We've got nothing to bill. If I clicked on the invoice button, it just brings up the payments button, and there is nothing to post right now. And that's because we haven't retrieved that time. That is a batch process, but you can do it manually. And what I mean by that is if I just come over here to our time manager, here's a screen where you would bring up all of the work that your technicians have done for the day or the week, for example. Here you can see they're all due for retrieval. I would have the ability at this point to go through, verify those, mark them as approved and finished as a team manager or something like that. And then obviously I can go on and click them all on and click the retrieve button. And that would go across all of the jobs and all of the technicians that I've obviously filtered into this screen here and apply all of their time, take all of their time and turn that time into billing or costing or whatever it might be that I'm going to do as a batch process. We could then actually even take that a step further and run another batch process called multi-post, which will take all of those jobs that have anything to be billed And when I say build, I mean anything to be posted, whether it be cost because it's covered by agreement or cost and revenue, and take all of those and do an invoice run across, 100, 200 jobs. The idea being that, your texts go out throughout the week. Maybe on Friday, the team manager comes in, goes through this, retrieves all of the time, and then goes into multi-post and post invoices for 100 jobs that you've done that week, if that's how you do your invoicing. So all of those tools are there and are available. What we're talking about doing now is doing that process manually. So we're here inside of our job, and I'm going to just grab that and I'm going to drag that over here like this, and it's going to do the same process. So what's happened now is we can see that time is now complete, and we would see that through all of the modules. If we come back here, you can see it went red as soon as I clicked on it, indicating that it is complete. So that time is now complete. And we can see by doing that retrieval, what happened is it brought in all of those bits and pieces into our job in order for us to do the invoicing side. We can see here, if I open this up, we have labor here for that user. We have 8 minutes and the time, the start and stop time here, which converts to a quantity of 0.13 hours at $30. And we can see that through here as well. We've got the costs coming through here, and those costs are automatically calculated based on the employee code and things like that. So if I was to change this code here and move off, you'll see that the cost will automatically change because Andrea has a different cost. So that's all automatic in the system, and it's going to do that for you. We can see under here the notation that we took, and we can see here is the state of the equipment when I arrived, and there's the picture that was taken. And so if I open up that picture, there is the picture that was taken when they were out in the field. So all of that has flown back into the job document. We can see the two inventory parts that we had here, and we can see the miscellaneous part where we said that it was bolts and the relevant information that we did around that. So at that time, I would go ahead and I would just click on post now, and we can see here we're raising an invoice for our customer. We can see our subtotal here, less discounts, all of those sort of things, and our net due. We can preview the invoice. We can take payments here. We can recalculate or look at the tax as needed. We can even come down here and have a look at what that's made up of, and we could even go ahead and say, well, we're actually not going to bill them for that right now. We could untick that, and you'll see that the totals will automatically recalculate based on what I've got ticked on here. So there's a lot of flexibility in the software about how you do pretty much everything that you do, all the way from your scheduling. There's flexibility there. Your technician has flexibility in his Field Connect about how he manages his day and what kind of information he needs to enter. And now coming back to the billing process, I showed you can do it as a batch, and I'm showing you can do it all the way down to the individual line level as required. But I'm going to go ahead and post that now. And that has generated an invoice for me. So I can come over here to my totals, and I can see here's my posted totals here. I've got nothing in ready. In other words, what's ready to be posted. It's all moved across to the posted total here. And I can see, what my GP and all of those sort of things are that I have available to me here. Some of this information, especially to do with costs, is all very user security configurable, but I'm logged in as admin and I have access to obviously all functionality. So at that point, from a do and charge kind of job, we would be finished. We scheduled our technician, we sent them out there, they recorded everything they needed to record. That got brought back into the system and converted into billing, and that billing was then invoiced to our customer for an invoice for them to pay. Of course, we might email them the invoice. All of those functionalities that you would expect from an accounting software are all there. And I don't want to take up a lot of time showing you all of that, but that's obviously all there. I could come across to my summary tab, open up the invoice at any point here, and click on print to reprint that if need be. All of those sort of functionalities are available to you as well. What we've also done now is generated equipment history. So now if I rerun that history report, I would see all of these other jobs that have been done for that equipment, the extra parts and services that I used. And of course, I would now be able to start running reports to say, okay, I paid $1,000 when I purchased it. I sold it for $4,000 when I sold it, and I've now spent $600, for example, on servicing it, and I've made no revenue on that. Of course, in this case, we did, but if it was under warranty, I made no revenue. So I can get a true lifetime value of that equipment to my business and that sort of thing. So that is your standard do and charge job, and I can't remember the exact time I was due to finish. Linda, at what time did we have originally scheduled? Was it 12:15 or 12:30?
About 12:30, but
about 12:30. Okay. So one thing I will show you, I do like to show you, the system is extremely flexible and I haven't completed the job yet. So for example, if I realized that the technician had entered the incorrect time and we were supposed to actually bill them for an hour and 8 minutes, maybe they didn't use the recorder, maybe they entered the time manually. I just wanted to show you how you would go ahead and fix that up. Now, of course, I could go into my time record and fix it there. But if I just want to fix the billing, what I can actually do is just open up that line that has already been billed. We can see here we have a supply quantity, an estimate quantity, and a posted quantity. So I can come along and I can just click on one here to enter in another quantity here and one more hour, and I can just repost that. And so what I've done there is I've raised a second invoice for that same line, and we see that posted total now is an hour and 13 minutes. And so we can see that there as well. So what I'm trying to highlight there is each line is multiple billed, and that moves more towards maybe your job costing type work. If you've got a scenario where you're doing a large scale install, and you're doing that through Service Manager, you may have one labor line per employee on the job, and as they go and do their labor on a weekly basis, you're just incrementing that labor and posting at the end of the week, incrementing that labor and posting. Each line will contain all of the postings that they've had. You can see that here. I've got 2 postings now for that line, the first one at 0.13 and the second one at 1. So we'll be able to look at each of those invoices independently. But when I look at the total of the line and the total of the phase and then the total of the job, it's going to include all of those postings as part of that. Excuse me. The other thing that I didn't show you is you're able to also do cost only as well. So for example, if I wanted to put some labor for, or let's say a call out charge, for example, on there, which is a cost to my business, it's where I cover my my fuel, for example, I put that as part of the call out charge. I can actually mark that over here as cost only. And of course, I have numerous defaults and things like that in the system that would mark it as to be cost only. And so I'm putting in one here at $25. And so what I'm doing there is because I'm a fully integrated system that integrates with AP and AR, as well as, purchasing, inventory, and the general ledger, what I'm trying to capture against each of my jobs is the true cost of my service. And while I may not charge my customer for this call out fee, it's a cost to my business that I'm including, as I mentioned, my fuel and vehicle running costs and things like that as part of that. So I would apply that cost only charge here. And when I post that, you'll notice it does not post to a customer invoice. It won't go through to the accounts receivable. It's just purely a cost that I'm taking up into my service and into my general ledger as part of the cost of this job. And what I will be seeing now is under my totals, this cost here under services will include that call out charge. And so that has altered the cost of my job, which has altered my GP on the job and has actually gone under that equipment as well. So there are 2 of the other things that I wanted to show before we opened up to questions. Obviously, the cost only one is quite handy, especially with the job costing type work as well. You may be doing a lot of that as purely cost and not billing the customer for that work, and so that that can be done as well. With your labor as well, you are also able to cost and bill differently. So I could come in here and say, I want to cost 10 hours because that's what we actually did, but we're only going to bill them for 8. Okay, so I'm going to bill for 8 and cost for 10. And that's something that happens quite often as well, is we bill them for one value and we cost another based on, our agreements or whatever we might have. So the system is extremely flexible in the way that allows you to do all of that sort of stuff as well. So I think at that point, if we're due to finish at 12:30, I should open up to questions from Steve and his team. So please feel free to ask some questions.
This is Steve. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. I've got several questions. First of all, when we go back to the calendar, you were showing us basically a daily calendar. Is there a module where you can look at a week at a glance or the month at a glance, anything like that?
Sure. Well, you've got up here, you've got week, month
okay.
up here as well. And another one that's really handy that I like to show is the summary. So for example, if I have done a week of scheduling, I can come over here to my summary. Let that refresh here. I can come over to my summary and I can run that, and I've put in the dates here. And it's going to show me across a period of time each of my individual resources and their time. And obviously what I'm going to want to see in this kind of view is, especially if I'm scheduling for the week ahead, is that all of my resources are about the same color. And that means that I've spread my workload evenly. Someone's not overloaded, someone's not overloaded. So there's a heap of tools in here for you to manage your schedule on a weekly basis, that sort of thing. We also have, as part of this, we have the job list. And this screen is more useful when you go ahead and you create your work orders and then schedule them later. So what it does is it loads in via either the query or the quick query here, a list of all the jobs, and then it works on a more Gantt style view where I've got the job selected and I'm now seeing the schedule. So whereas the calendar is the resource and then I find the job, this is the job and I find the resource, so to speak. So if I create jobs throughout the week and then on Friday I come in and say, show me all my jobs that were created this week that haven't been scheduled, I'll get a list like this and I can just go through them job by job by job like that and schedule them on a Gantt view. So the system is very flexible. The calendar program is very, very flexible and has a lot of functionality.
Good.
Did that answer your question on that one, Steve?
It does. It does.
Great.
Yes. I've got lots of questions in the field app for the technicians as well.
Sure.
When we do our job costing, oftentimes we'll run under our job cost module. We'll do purchase orders for a job, and we'll have the entire job sent directly to a job site. And oftentimes, at the end of every job, at the end of that job, we'll have items that we return back to inventory. Mm-hmm. Can the technician return items back to inventory through that module?
Yes, he can. So what would happen here is, and I'll just show you the way that would work. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a second billing group here, not under the equipment. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put an inventory code on. So let's say A1900K, I think. Okay, it'll do. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here, and I'm going to say 2 of them, for example. And I'm going to raise a purchase order. So I'm going to do that from in here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do that super quick. I'm just going to put in the vendor here. And as you can see, this is the link between Service Manager and Purchasing as I've generated a purchase order. Okay, and I did that quick, and obviously there's a lot of screens there, but you know we've got time constraints here. But you can see under that item now, I have a purchase order requisition. Okay, that purchase order will be fulfilled at some point or another, and the stock would come in, and at that point I would maybe send my technician out there. So now he's on the field. So what would happen is he's on the field here in the job, and what he would do is if he didn't use that, he can come along here and click on Tree. And he can come down here and find that part here. And he can edit that. Oh, I've got the job open, I'm sorry. Only one person can edit that at the same time. So if I just click continue here and edit that again. So he can see here that it was quantity 2, so he can change that back to quantity 1 and save that. Now, while that's not going to return the part to the vendor, that's a separate process, obviously. What that's going to do is ensure that if somebody clicks post, it's only going to deduct 1 from inventory, and the other one will just basically be in uncommitted stock, ready for them to use on the next job.
Okay, good.
So I didn't show you a lot of functionality because obviously I wanted to try to really focus on a very quick do and charge job, but the functionality is there because you can imagine we've been asked for a lot of this sort of stuff before.
I'm gonna stay in this vein. All of our work is flat rate pricing.
Sure.
So when the technician's doing job costing and you're creating invoices, we would like to record the information that they use, of course, the labor and the material, but the invoice would be done on a flat rate basis. Is that?
Sure.
Is that a procedure that you see often used with this program?
Yes, it is. So that will come down to being what's called the job type. So if we open up this job, the first thing, and we didn't look at this, is every job has a job type. Those job types are used for numerous things. The first and primary reason, obviously, for reporting. Show me all of my jobs of this job type and show me all of my jobs of that job type, obviously. Secondary to that, the job type is like, in a way, a structure of how the document is set up or how the job is set up. So it tells it how to work, basically. You know, I'm doing phases, I track time, you know, all of these other things, budgets, that sort of thing. one of the options that you can have here is default everything to be cost only. So what that means is when the technician is putting in everything they're putting in is purely cost. So they're not actually putting in any revenue. So what they're doing now is recording everything that they use. It's going to record the cost of all of that. It's also going to decrement if it's inventory. That's going to help it be decremented from inventory control at its appropriate cost. And then on the job as part of the template, you would just have one line called service billing, for example, and that would have all of the revenue and none of the cost. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely.
And that's very standard. So you'd have that on at the job type level, so the tech doesn't ever have to worry about ticking anything on or anything like that. He puts in the parts that he used, and they all go through just as cost. And when you created the job from that template, that included one extra line, which was revenue, for example, and $100 or whatever your fixed rate is, and that's how you would do that. Again, all invisible to the tech. He just has to put in his parts.
And the technician can bill right. I mean, all of our service calls are billed and collected on site. So the technician can bill right on site, correct?
Yes, he can. Yep. So he's got the invoice button down the bottom here, and he can go ahead and invoice.
Go back in and look at the pricing as well, right on the like the flat rate pricing we have for a procedure. You can go and look at that and quote the homeowner whether they have a service agreement or not, what their pricing would be, and show them the difference, that type of thing.
Yes, he can. Yep. So you can see there's the prices all coming through here. So that would include that flat rate pricing at that point, and he could obviously click on that and edit the details of that directly from here as needed. So if I change that here to 3,500, for example, and save, it's going to bring back to the invoice, and you'll see that that's been adjusted.
Okay. And does the labor that they're putting in go directly to a payroll module?
Yes, it can. So we have payroll integration here. So under each employee, for example, they're linked to the payroll module, and each labor code is linked to an earnings code in payroll. And then we have a thing that will take all of those labor hours and generate payroll time cards. Now we support the Sage US and Sage Canadian payroll modules. So we have those. If you're using another module, what we have in there is the ability to export those as a CSV or an Excel file to get those out of the system.
Will it automatically notify when the technician's at overtime rate, or?
No, it will not. But you do have the ability to do that. Each technician has 5 levels of labor loading, and so you can apply that to the labor loading. The more common way of doing that would be, however, is to use different codes. So if I open up this screen here where my codes are, here are my labor codes. So I've got calibrate, inspect, install, labor, and travel. So I can have labor, labor overtime, labor weekend, all different codes. So you would actually just code that to a different code is the most common way of doing that.
All right. And we're relying on the technician to do this when they're entering the information, or do we have to go back and adjust that for them?
Unfortunately, yes, the tech's going to need to either do it himself, or you can obviously adjust it later. The system doesn't know what code to use at different times of the day or anything like that. There's no setup for that. So that is a fairly manual process that you just choose the appropriate code. Now, of course, when you create the schedule, so back here when I created the schedule, if I come back to my calendar, so let's say I put that on outside of business hours, white being business hours here. I'll just link it to that job that I've already done. Down the bottom here, I can put in, the overtime rate when I'm creating the schedule, because I put it outside of hours, so I can put in any code that I want there. And then as the tech records their time, it's going to pick up whatever code was there. So they wouldn't need to do it, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I think that covers. That covers what I have. Yes.
Right. Any other questions from anyone else?
Is there a standard look for your invoice, or are the invoices created in this software editable?
Yes, every report in the software is editable. Every single report is editable, okay? So the standard one that we provide obviously looks like this. Let me just make sure I'm printing to screen. I am. So if I bring up an invoice here and I print that, This is the report that we provide, obviously, but this is completely and 100% customizable to match the requirements that you have in your business. Okay.
Okay.
But that's the one that we provide, and Linda and her team would take that and modify it to whatever you want it to look and feel like for your business.
Okay.
Very good. Anything else?
Yeah, I don't know of anything else right now. Maybe somebody else has a question?
Do we have any questions from anyone else?
I'm going to take that as a positive that I did an okay job showing you the software, hopefully.
Well, and you certainly did. And Daniel, we thank you. That was a great demo of the value that this software can provide, along with Sage 300, to the service industry. So if there are no more questions, I would also like to thank everyone again for attending today's demo. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your consultant or myself, and we can get those answered for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
Daniel.
Well, thank
That's my
you,
pleasure,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.